Salutations once again to the Truth Core, whoever or wherever you may be on the planet. This is once again John Lash with the 12th installment in Mythology 101, and the title is The Correction of the World. So far so good, you could say. It turns out that in the process of developing this crash course in comparative mythology, some premium Gnostic intel has come to light. And of course, most of that Gnostic intel, all of it, can be found in the file on the right. So, how to conclude? How would I conclude? How would you conclude? Well, we're not together in the same place at the same time. But let's see what we can do together. Looking back, we've seen that there is a unique set of parallels between the Hebrew file and the Gnostic file. And that phenomenon of parallelism, one mythology or mythogen referring to another and even critiquing the other, is unparalleled. It's an exceptional case, to my knowledge, in the entire field of world mythology. So I'm letting you in on that little secret. That being so, we might ask ourselves, well, have we considered all the significant parallels? Have we covered all the instances in which these two files refer to each other or carry parallel themes that appear to be locked in conflict with each other? And the answer is, oh yes, indeed we do. There is one more instance to be considered. Before we get to that, though, it would be appropriate for me to refer to the title of the speech that I quoted at the beginning of the last talk. Now, the title of that speech has the word why in it, so it could be posed as a question, but it's actually posed as an assertion. Why we are anti-Semites. That's the title of that talk, which was given, as I said, exactly 100 years ago in August of 1920. Now, having taken this crash course with me, you are now in a position to say, if you choose to, that you are an anti-Semite. And in saying so, you will know exactly what you mean. You see, there is a deceit in that term. Everybody knows in common usage what it means, what it connotes and denotes. Everyone knows that it is a term of condemnation to be anti-Semitic. But in the perspective of multiracial comparative mythology, it is not at all something unusual. First of all, are you anti the Semitic languages? Do you have something against them? Well, not basically in and of themselves, but you know from the study we've undertaken that a certain ideology of race supremacy, deceit, and domination has come into the world and operates in the world today through the medium of those three languages, Hebrew, Arabic, and Aramaic. And so if you are against that ideology, uniquely born into the world through those languages, then yeah, you could say accurately that you are anti-Semitic. And to say so would not in any way be a racial slur or a racial allusion, because Semitic refers to language and not race, remember? But of course you know that, and I know that, and we together know that, but who else is going to know that if you happen to point out at a dinner party with a big grin on your face that you just learned that you're anti-Semitic by listening to this course in comparative mythology from this raving Gnostic named John Lash. While we're on this topic, let me offer you a little advice in regard to public relations or social relations. I use a simple formula of X, Y, and Z to remind myself of what I'm up against. Not just as a Gnostic, but as a human being who just wants to live in peace and pleasure with other people and help them and be helped by them and thrive in beauty in the natural paradise of this world. I like to keep my mind on the problem of evil. I don't consider that there is anything such as cosmic evil. I've said this before. I've been out there. I've been in the supernatural. I go there on a routine basis. And there's nothing evil out there. It's nothing but beauty and freedom from one end to the next. The evil is here in our human ranks. It's in our midst, and it is a phenomenon of social life. So I talk about social evil. And in order to keep my mind on that subject, which you might want to do from time to time, as you reflect upon this course you've taken with me, I think of the X, the Y, and the Z, because it helps me identify who I'm looking at. So X stands for Xenosh, and it's spelled Xenosh. So the letter X is pronounced as a Z. It is, of course, the root of the word xenophobia. Xenophobia is spelt with an X and not a Z, right? So xeno means anything that is alien, anything that is apart from what is true and natural and genuine. So the Xenosh are those who set themselves apart from what is natural and true and genuine. They set themselves apart from nature. They set themselves apart from and above the human species. And that's why they're called Xenosh. Now, there are two types of Xenosh. There are those who may be called the racial Xenosh, and they identify themselves as such, and they have a really big issue about being racially Xenosh. Those are the ones, of course, who attach themselves to the Hebrew file and the Semitic mythogen, which is to be distinguished from Sumerian myths that come from the same part of the world. So that's your X, the racial Xenos, but not just that. There is also a category of creatures in the world, in the social order, who can be called the non-racial Xenosh. But they are wannabes, enablers, and facilitators of the racial Xenosh. So they all come under the generic term of the Xenosh. Oh yeah, that's the Xenosh out there. Look at them. Look at what they're doing now. Look at those usual suspects. The Xenosh trash has washed in once again. X, Y, Z. Now go to Z. What is Z? Z stands for Zadik, or Zadik, which is spelled in many ways with a TZ. It's also spelled with a Q. It's a Hebrew word, and it means righteous, holier than thou. Simply that. So who are the Zadikim? Well, I wrote extensively about them in Not in His Image, and I showed that the Zadokite uprising in ancient Palestine is the root of the global terrorist mindset today. It's the root of global terrorism. It's the root of all fear, is Zadok. And Zadok, the Z, refers to the Supreme Council among the Zenosh. That is to say, the leaders, the guides, the ideologues of the Hebrew mythogen. They have other names which are well known in the world. One of them is Chabad Lubavitch. They have been called by Douglas Reed, who wrote The Controversy of Zion, the Talmudic Directorate. They have been called the Kahal, which means the council, the high council. So the Zadok are the high council running the affairs of the Zenosh. And the Zenosh are running humanity and everything that is good, kind, decent, beautiful, truthful, and pleasurable in this world into their particular flavor of oblivion, right before your eyes. Just saying. I'm just saying, in case you didn't notice. Or maybe you didn't notice because you're in the Y category. Now notice how the Y is in the middle. There's an X for the Zenosh. There's a Z for the Zadikim. And then there's the Y. Now what does Y stand for? Well, it's the first letter of the word you in English. Y-O-U. And it could be you. It could be. But let's look a little closer. I'll give you a break. What they used to call the benefit of the doubt. Although I'm not a man beholden to doubts. But let's look at it. I actually see it in a playful way. You see, one of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet is Yod, Y-O-D, which is the iota. And that letter is in the name by which the Hebrew call themselves. We pointed that out. And that the name of their God is concealed in their own name. So, how does that apply? Well, it's kind of an esoteric joke, you see? Because if Yod is I, and I is what people call themselves, then you have to ask, well, what are they basing their identity on? And if they base their identity on the Hebrew mythogen in its Christian form, its Jewish form, its Arabic or Muslim form, then they are religiously determined yods. It's a code for your ordinary dupe. So many of the people in the world, as far as I can see, fucking everybody who adheres to any religion whatsoever. I'll leave Hinduism and Buddhism aside. That's a side dish. I've tackled that elsewhere. But when you talk about the Abrahamic religions, you've got to be so pathetic to even consider subscribing to one of these. As I said in Not in His Image, Christianity is a religion embraced by billions, but rarely chosen by anyone. And the same goes for Islam, and the same goes in triple measure for you know what. So you might be a yod. The Y stands for yod. Your ordinary dupe. And there are many, many ordinary dupes out there who have been run into near insanity by the deceit and connivance of the Zenosh. And that game is reaching its endgame as I speak. So remember the XYZ may be a helpful formula. when you scrutinize those other creatures scuttling around out there in the social order. All right, now, back to themes. Themes are the material of creative mythology, parallel themes in different myths from different cultures. And we've seen these themes come up. The theme of paradise, the Garden of Eden. The theme of the snake, the tempter. The snake appears in many guises, of course. Theme of the flood. Theme of twins. And the theme of the fall. And do you know that there is no fall of man and no act of primordial disobedience in Gnosis? In the Gnostic Sophianic file, you won't find it. Gnosis does not require obedience. It just requires, basic, what shall I say? Drumroll, please. Intelligence? Yeah, something like that. No obedience in Gnosis. No obedience to the off-planet Father God. None at all. And the fall in the Gnostic narrative is the fall of the wisdom goddess herself. And as I said, and it does bear repeating, that it is due to the action of the Aeon Sophia herself, to her fall, to her outrageous daring plunge that brings her into this experiment in intimate interactivity with you. It is due to all that the archons are in this experiment as well. Yes, you can say it's her fault if you want to say that. But it was an anomaly. You are living in an experiment where you must see the anomaly in the experiment to know what is happening to you. Carlos Castaneda said, and I quote from Alien Dreaming on Nemeta, "Human beings are on a journey of awareness which has been momentarily interrupted by extraneous forces." Those are his exact words. Now I know that a lot of things in the living gnosis that I teach are not easy to get. It's a challenge. It does require, at least, if not a certain IQ, well, I prefer to say a willingness to exercise the intelligence that you have, whatever it may be, to flex your intelligence. Certainly, practice of gnosis requires this. And I realize as well that it is a difficult pill for some people to swallow when they encounter the home story, the fallen goddess scenario, and when they learn that it was Sophia's fall that produced the archons. You want to know exactly in lurid detail how that happened? Go read the home story. And that's not an easy thing for people to take who happen to be attached to the notion that God must be all-powerful, all-knowing, and cannot make any mistakes. But that is not the case in the Gnostic scenario of the human adventure. So, if you can accept that feature of the narrative, and as I say, it's difficult, it's a stumbling block for many people, then you're engaged. It's kind of a test, you see. And passing that test, you become engaged. you become implicated. Sure, it was her outrageous fall that caused the anomalous appearance of the archons. And now they have penetrated into this divine experiment in the laboratory of the earthly paradise, and you are the prime subject of that experiment. Therefore, you are implicated in their intrusion. And what you gonna do about it? As you might speak to a 3-year-old child. What you gonna do about it? Well, the better question, and the necessary question, my friends, is what's she going to do about it? What is she doing about it? And that question brings us to the ultimate theme and conclusion of this series, the theme of Sophia's correction. Now here we are together, remember, standing in front of the table, and we turn our attention now to the file on the right. We look down, we open up the file, and we spread it out. So where is correction to be found in this file? Where is that concept to be seen? Well, I assure you that you really have to go through the material with a fine-tooth comb to find it. But it's there. It's there like a beautiful fleck of gold in the prospector's pan. There are, I believe, 3 instances in the totality of the Nag Hammadi literature where this word appears, and it is a Greek word, diorthosis. Diorthosis. And you see it written in Coptic, in capital letters. But it's actually a Greek word. And it means something like two-way resolution or two-way regulation. It does have the implication of being in some manner a dual or dual mode correction because of the prefix di, D-I, which, by the way, is also the initials for Dakini instruction. Now, it so happens that it is a very great fact of scholarship, and not just my reckless and self-educated scholarship, but the solid scholarship of academics and scholars of religious history. It is a very great fact that although the Gnostics left this concept and this term in their writings, in what remains, they didn't say what it is or how it's going to happen. Curious proposition, isn't it? So, it's possible that they did. It's possible that there were Gnostic treatises which elaborated on the notion of diorthosis, or Sophia's correction. The only 3 passages that can be found, and they're not easy to find, refer to a future event looking forward from the time of the Gnostics, 2,000 years ago, a future moment when, as they say, quote, the Aeon Sophia would correct her deficiency, end quote. Well, how's she going to do that? And how on earth would you possibly ever know, first of all, that such a concept exists, and second, that there is a living, intelligent, cosmically active, self-aware agency, the planetary logos, who's going to accomplish it? And even if it were being accomplished right in front of your eyes, how would you even know it? Well, that is where the intel from the living Gnosis today comes into the picture. Because only through the living Gnosis today will you be able to educate yourself in what is Sophia's correction and how to be involved with it and how to be part of its success in correcting the world, in correcting what's gone wrong in the world. But hold on there a moment. Whoa, big boy. Remember how we're conducting this study together. There's a file on the right and there's a file on the left. Now we find the concept of correction in the file on the right. I wonder if there's anything equivalent in the file on the left. So we open up the Hebrew file and we look through the different contents of it, and lo and behold, well, there's a huge stack of papers with a very fat paperclip attached to them. And that is a set of documents within the Hebrew file entitled Tikkun Olam, the correction of the world. You don't have to look far or go far to find the concept of Tikkun Olam. As a matter of fact, there are some Judaic scholars and some accomplished and respected rabbis who would say that it is the primary signature of the true spirit of Judaism, to correct the world. And I'm not going to talk to you about what their profile of correction is. I provided a link to Chabad Lubavitch themselves. Go and see what they say about it. Go and read what they say. Go and read the hype. And they'll tell you what I already told you as a Gnostic. You may recall, I said when a Gnostic makes a mistake, he corrects himself. When I make a mistake, I correct myself. And in the process of correcting myself, I learned something that I didn't know before I made the mistake. I don't just correct the mistake to revert to the pre-mistake condition. The correcting of the mistake generates a new and better condition. And this is a fundamental precept, a fundamental principle of Tikkun Olam. I kid you not. It is identical to the fundamental principle of Sophia's correction. What do you think of that? These two concepts mirror each other in a most spectacular manner. They confront each other in a dramatic way. And I kid you not when I say that the confrontation and conflict of these two different narratives of the correction of the world is deciding the fate of this world. I kid you not. And it's happening as I speak. Now, it might be asked, if you're a good student and you've enjoyed this and learned some of the fundamentals of the method of comparative mythology, it might be asked, well, correction is a theme. Does that theme occur in any other of the files? Does a theme that closely resembles or maybe exactly fits the profile of Tikkun Olam on one hand, Sophia's correction on the other, does that exist? Rummaging through the other 40 files in the pile. Well, yes, it does. It does occur in one particular instance. Now, I have to warn you that the theme, the general theme of world renewal and regeneration of life is common to almost every mythology. But I'm not talking about the generic or common theme of renovation, recreation, renewal. We're looking at a special case of this. And the closest that you come to the special case in any other mythology occurs in Persian mythology and in the basis of Zoroastrianism, which is a huge disaster, and I don't recommend you go there. But there is this concept that comes out of the Avestas of ancient Persia, which, by the way, is where the fallen goddess scenario also comes from, which is called the Frashokereti. Did you get that? Frashokereti. And Frashokereti is a Persian term that means renovation, the improvement and repair and improvement of something that is wrong to make it better than it was in the first place. So the concept does exist, the theme does exist. But you only find it in that one instance. And the reason why, without going into a long digression, is that most mythologies come from race-specific cultures who do not have a historical and linear conception of time. So naturally, they follow the cycles of nature, the breathing, and the rhythms and moods of the mother planet, and they recognize that everything dies and is reborn, and there is a continual cycle of regeneration. I'm talking about the concept of regeneration of the world that is rooted exclusively in linear and historical time. And most scholars will tell you that that begins with Zoroastrian materials, Zoroastrian literature. Well, it so happens that both the Hebrew version of correcting the world and the Sophianic or Gnostic version are tracked and effectuated in historical time. Sophia's correction is an event in historical time, and I can assure you, in precise time. The living Gnostics today who practice that sophisticated method of using human intelligence in the way it is designed to work, got it? They can tell you about the historical and linear timing of Sophia's correction down to the year, down to the month, down to the day, and even sometimes to the minute in the day. And I have done it hundreds of times, and I continue to do so. And people are doing it with me. I am not alone. Now, coming around the bend, because I do feel like bringing all this to a screeching halt so I can shut up for a while. Coming around the bend, the comparative mythologist deems it appropriate to point out to you that there are 5 top themes in world mythology. I've listed them on Nemeta. And one of those top themes is divine intervention. This theme is absolutely inescapable. And I don't care if you believe in divine intervention or not. You may think it's delusional, a delusional concept, if you're an atheist or an agnostic or whatever you call yourself. It doesn't fucking matter. Let me tell you, it is the fact of the existence and persistence of that belief that you cannot deny. You may not accept the belief, but you cannot deny the existence, persistence, and power of that belief. And to some extent, the comprehension that you can form of Sophia's correction depends upon factoring in this concept. Is Sophia's correction an act of divine intervention? Well, yes, in a way. Okay, hold on, hold that thought. Is Tikkun Olam an act of divine intervention? Well, yes, it is so defined, but in another way. Now, as we come around to the home stretch in these talks, let's you and I put our gnosis together over the table and take a really close look at the differences in the concept of divine intervention that is implied in the notion of correcting the world. And better, more precisely, the differences in the implementation of that divine intervention in the world, as a direct event in the world, right here, right now. How is correction to be implemented, and by whom? Well, that's the great question to which everything in this series has brought you. And the answer to that question is not difficult to express or state. I've done so hundreds of times. In fact, I never stop talking about it. What I want to tell you now, so that you have it as a takeaway, is that the agency who is charged with Tikkun Olam, the version of correction of the world you find in the Hebrew narrative, is exactly those people who have the God complex and see themselves as an alien superspecies, a master race. On the other side of the table, over here in the file on the right, those who implement the correction of the world are who? Well, it's a deal. Such a deal. It's a deal that you know and see and understand and accept, or you don't. And the deal is, you do it in your sovereign individuality as a human animal, but you do not do it alone. You do it with other human animals who hold the same commitment, and you do it cooperatively and coactively with Sophia herself. That's the difference. Those are the two concepts of implementation of correcting the world, consistent with the mythogen of the Hebrew. They see themselves not only as the proxies or agents of Yaldabaoth on earth, they have come to see themselves as God itself. The presence of the Jewish people is the presence of God in this world. And you can ask any Talmudic rabbi if that is a correct and accurate statement. And I think they'll have to say it is. So they, the chosen tribe, the archontically demented among us, are running the correction of the world. And isn't it obvious when you look at Blofeld, a.k.a. Klaus Schwab, sitting up there in the chair, telling you how we are going to live and how we have to live and how everything is going to be run on IT. So unless you're willing to stand up and talk back to Klaus, you may have to go along with his plan. But hold on. What's happening over here on the right side of the table, and that's toward the right side of everything? There's another game in town. What I would say as a Gnostic to anyone who confronts me with the grand agenda of Tikkun Olam, I would say, hey, two can play at that game. The ultimate competition between these two mythogens comes down to correction, and correction is happening right now. One day at a time, and in the grand scale. Sophia's correction is underway, and it has been underway since a reset process that took 3 years between March of 2011 and March of 2014. And it so happened that I have meticulously chronicled in detail every moment and every aspect of that reset in something like 200 hours of talks and literally thousands of pages of transcriptions of these talks. And those are the logs, the navigator's logs of the Gaian navigation experiment. So, reset ended in March of 2014. What is that now? Over 6 years ago? So over 6 years ago, going back 9 years ago, I have elaborately developed the concept of reset. And I have put reset into the minds of many, many people as an active and creative concept for transforming their lives and participating in Sophia's correction. And lo and behold, 6, 7 years later, along comes the big lumbering oaf, Mr. Blofeld, and now he's got a great idea for you. And what does he call it? He calls it the Great Reset. Well, thank you so much, Klaus. I can't tell you how grateful I am, and I know that Tikkun Olam must be, for sure, a pure act of generosity and love coming out of the profound good nature of the Zenosh. Couldn't be anything but that. I'm so happy. I have such a safe feeling being told how I'm going to live the rest of my life by billionaires and hideous, demented technocrats. It is quite a remarkable fact, and I'm certain that I am the only scholar who's ever pointed this out, that there is an exact mirroring between the concept of Tikkun Olam as defined by the Tzaddikim Talmudic priesthood and the way I define it, because I'm the living Gnostic today who defines it, because in their texts, in what survives, you don't find a definition of it. So I provide one. And it is a remarkable fact that what I say about Sophia's correction is exactly what the Zenosh say about Tikkun Olam, except for how it is implemented, how it is to be implemented, and who implements it. Of course, the Hebrew version of correcting the world doesn't tell you that the archons who inspire that notion of correction are actually the problem that needs to be corrected. They are the problem, but they present themselves as the solution. It's only due to the Gnostics and the Gnostic warning and the Gnostic expose of salvationalism that you can know what I'm telling you today. And you might consider what a privilege it is to know that. Enough said. And I'll be seeing you one more time in the beauty to come.